I'm here with Dauphin County Commissioner Jeff Haste. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
With Dauphin County on track to shift to the yellow phase this weekend, what are your thoughts on the timing of this shift? Do you feel that the county's ready?
I think the county has been ready actually for a couple weeks.
And what are your feelings on the handling of this entire pandemic by this administration?
I think it's pretty well known. I questioned the way they've handled it all along. I actually think they've looked at some of the wrong markers. Their communication with counties has been less than adequate and at times very confusing.
You've convened a task force to help guide the county through the reopening process with protecting small businesses as one of your main priorities. What are some steps that the county is doing to protect those small businesses?
Well, actually, the task force is going to have three categories. One is small businesses, one is going to be healthcare, and the other is community issues. And part of that is because we've noticed as we've gone through this, while we're addressing the pandemic, we've actually worsened the mental health and addiction crisis that we already had going into this. So we want to make sure that our task force addresses that as well. We want to take a more balanced approach than what the administration has done, so that as we move forward and we protect our businesses, we will also still continue to protect our community at the same time.
And what are some things that have already been put in place to protect those small businesses on the county level?
Well, what we've done, I want to say it was end of March or early April. We teamed up with the Dauphin County Chamber. It's a Harrisburg Regional Chamber. And we did a website called Dauphin County Business Strong. And then we also on Saturday evenings at 4, the president of the chamber and myself did a call-in radio show. So businesses could call in and ask questions. How do we handle this? What's the guidelines for this? Just to try to pull everything from the federal government and the state government into one resource so that we can help our businesses out. We also took some of our federal CDBG monies that came from HUD and put a small business loan program together. It was a program that was set out for businesses with less than 25 employees that was in a low to moderate income community, or that 51% of their employees were low or moderate income employees. And what we were able to do with that is we were able to give grants out to some of these businesses. And you know, they were small grants, $10,000 grants, but they were grants that were able to keep people, if not open, at least able to reopen when this is all said and done. And we heard from a number of small businesses, primarily restaurants, who greatly appreciated it. And as this was going on, the money for them came at the right time. It's just when their cash flow was out, and this little infusion of cash was able to buy them a couple more weeks.
And do you have any idea of a time frame for how long this task force is going to be at work?
No, it will be as long as we need it to be. And I would think it will be until we open up. We will also have medical folks looking at our plan to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to stay in compliance with CDC guidelines and safe reopening.
And why was it a priority for the county to make this task force racially diverse?
Well, we're fortunate that we have a very diverse community, and a lot of our small businesses are, in fact, minority-owned businesses. And we wanted to make sure that as we were helping them out, we were also being able to help the community out. And we've seen statistically where the minority community has been hit a little harder than the rest of the community with the COVID pandemic. And we wanted to make sure that their concerns were addressed as well. And when I talked earlier about the addiction and the mental health issues, as we all know, those issues have no predisposed color, race, or anything. They affect everybody. And one of the faults that we saw in the administration was they really were not doing anything to address that side of it. And we want to make sure that, in fact, we are doing that so all of our communities are safe moving forward.
Are there any new challenges that Dauphin County will have to face that maybe didn't have to be considered before in the red phase?
Well, the biggest challenge we have is an election coming up on June 2nd. And we're still in this awkward stage and has people confused. We have taken all the safety precautions that we can. We've sanitized. We're in the middle of sanitizing every polling place right now so that they will be sanitized when the doors open that day. We're going to have hand sanitizers there. The employees or the staff working the election will have masks. We're taking every precaution we can to make sure that the voter is safe when they come in, as well as the person conducting the voting polling place.
And
And that's
go ahead, continue.
a very interesting challenge at this time. We have a new machines that we're trying to put out there, as well as this, all at the same time, and it's put a fair amount of stress on our election day workers.
On the topic of the election day voters, do you or the county election board have any concerns about staffing for polling places?
Sure. And we've had a number of local election boards have resigned. We've then had to combine polling places in certain regions so that they're properly covered. We do have some employees on standby. I think we need to, be real about it and understand that maybe on election day, we still may have some trouble with certain workers not feeling comfortable to come to the polls, even though we've taken every precaution we can. So we are going to try to address those. The good thing is there have been a fair number of mail-in ballot applications. We're probably approaching, I would say if all those mail-in ballots come in, we'll be approaching about 50% of the normal voting population will voted by mail, so that should help in some cases. But then people need to understand that will slow the election result process. We probably will not have the true results for a couple of days because those mail-in ballots cannot be opened until the polls close on June 2nd.
What are the biggest concerns that you hear from people in the county about reopening?
Actually, I hear it more the other way. I hear from a lot of folks, why aren't we open now? And part of the confusion is whether it's pastors who've been getting a hold of me and say, our congregation is ready to come back, we can safely distance, whether it's restaurants saying that, whether it's hair salons saying that, whether it's barbershops saying that. It's confusing when they realize they can't open, but you can go to a Walmart or a Target or a giant store and there'd be hundreds of people in there. And we've seen that they've been able to do it, and the smaller family-owned businesses are at a disadvantage because they've not been able to open. And I hear more about why haven't we been able to open than why are we opening.
And finally, our county's nursing homes have been hit some of the hardest hit places with the COVID-19 infections and continue to be even as the county transitions to the yellow phase. Are you aware of any things being done to address this issue and make sure that infections don't continue to increase even as the rest of the county transitions to the yellow phase?
You're exactly right. Our biggest problem is, in fact, in our nursing homes and long-term care facilities. We have instituted a phone call with the administrators to try to get their information. Throughout this entire pandemic, we've been trying to reach out to them through our Dauphin County Area Agency on Aging and through our public safety director to make sure that we've gotten supplies to them. When we know there's a need, we've done what we could with it. Just yesterday, through a task force that CCAP, which is the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania, has put together to have, we're supposed to have dialogue with the administration on a more regular basis than we had in the past. I had asked, and I'm waiting for an answer back, if in fact the state has any plan to test nursing home staff for the antibody, because I think that's really critical. If we would know which staff in there are safe to go in, they have the antibody in there, we then could put those people in more critical places and make sure that we're not spreading the virus. I think a lot more can and should be done for nursing homes. It should have been done a while ago. Um, the administration is finally, I think, stepping it up and going to work with us to do that.
All right, Dauphin County Commissioner Jeff Haste, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Stay safe, and thank you for keeping our public informed.
Join our guests for insights on issues impacting local government and the citizens of Pennsylvania. Created by the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs, Inside Pennsylvania Boroughs connects you to legislation and policy that will affect you and your family. Your host, Chris Kapp, and his guests discuss current affairs that matter to you most. Connect with your state by tuning into Inside Pennsylvania Boroughs on Sundays here on PCN.
I'm here with Mayor of Harrisburg, Eric Papenfuse. Mayor, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So with Dauphin County on track to shift to the yellow phase this weekend, what does that mean for the city of Harrisburg? What's going to change?
Well, a lot of things are going to change. One thing which is going to happen in the very short term is that we're working with our downtown restaurants to sponsor a Saturday night in the city outdoor dining event, which will include shutting down 2nd Street, which is our restaurant row, and basically allowing the restaurants to add picnic tables and spread out into the street, allowing more room for patrons to gather and have a meal safely with proper social distancing. That's something that we weren't sure we were going to be allowed to do in the yellow phase. We thought we might have to wait till green, but Governor Wolf clarified that this past week. So we're excited about that. The other thing that's happening with the shift to yellow is that some of our retail businesses especially, which have been forced to be closed, are going to be opening up for the first time. And in the city of Harrisburg, we've taken the plight of small businesses very seriously over the past several months. One of the things I'm most proud about in our coronavirus response has been that we partnered with a local nonprofit to get about $1.7 million in small micro grants available to hundreds of small businesses in the city to help them make it through from one end of this crisis to the other. So a lot of those businesses which have just barely been able to scrape by are now going to be open. And you're going to start to see customers returning, again, practicing wearing masks, using proper social distancing, new cleaning regimens for a lot of these businesses. And it's going to take some time, but I think people are going to return to commerce in the city, and we're going to begin to see that really starting as early as this weekend.
And although shifting to the yellow phase is obviously a very hopeful sign, people are probably still being infected. How are you advising people in the city to continue to protect themselves?
Yes, I can actually share with you some very interesting data. One of the ways in which the city has been monitoring the crisis is we're doing something that some municipalities are doing called wastewater epidemiology. We're looking at the prevalence of the virus in our wastewater. We have a water system here, Capital Region Water, that serves not only the city, but the surrounding areas. By the latest report from that company, it's a company based out of MIT, they estimate that, and I'll give you the exact amount, 5.6% of the population currently is infected with the virus. That's thousands of people. It's more than 1 out of 20 in the city of Harrisburg. Much more than the results you're seeing from the testing. And we all know that testing is limited and is oftentimes not capturing asymptomatic people that aren't showing symptoms. And therefore, this data is really much more reliable. What it shows is that the virus is much more prevalent than perhaps people think. And that's why we have to continue taking precautions when we're moving into this yellow phase. If 1 out of 20 people have it, and a lot of those people aren't showing signs and symptoms, the real danger is that you will catch it. You might not even know that you have it, and then you might spread it to somebody who is vulnerable, like an older loved one or somebody who has some pre-existing conditions. So I know that families are starting, in some instances, this will be the first time that my kids are going to see their grandparents in about 2 months. So they're really looking forward to it. At the same time, we've got to be careful for them and for everyone. So I think doing things outdoors is important. I think practicing proper social distance when possible and wearing masks are all very important in ensuring public safety, in addition to washing hands and taking other sanitary precautions.
So as the city transitions into the yellow phase, reflecting back on the whole experience with the pandemic, what has been the economic or financial impact on the city of Harrisburg?
So that's a good question, and it's something that we're going to be seeing unfold here in really the second half of the year. But preliminarily, we know that there are certain revenue streams that have been completely devastated by the pandemic. We get millions of dollars a year in revenue from our parking system in Harrisburg. We count on that revenue. That revenue ground to a complete halt when not only did businesses shut down, but we also stopped parking enforcement for a time in the city. We also get money from the hotel tax, and of course, those revenues haven't come in. If you look at money that businesses pay in their business privileges taxes or individuals pay in their earned income taxes, those are also trending downward. The question is, how big a hit is it going to be, and how quickly are we going to recover, which is one of the things that we won't really know until we get a little bit further along in the recovery process. One thing I'm proud of in Harrisburg is that a few years ago, we went through a very difficult phase where the city almost went bankrupt. And one of the lessons that we learned from that was that we needed to build up a rainy day fund. So over the past 6 or 7 years that I've been mayor, we've slowly added to that fund. And we have a fairly large reserve fund, over $20 million of cash that we can use to plug those gaps this year. So we're going to get through without a tax increase, without having to limit city services or any of the things which other cities, unfortunately, are looking at having to contemplate. And if we can bounce back relatively quickly, then I think we can contain the damage.
Earlier, you made mention of local businesses. Can you talk more about some things that you've been able to do on a city level to address some of those businesses' concerns?
Yes, thank you. So not only have we done this business grant program for small businesses, and we also did a business survey where we reached out. We actually sent letters to all of our businesses in the city. We've got something like 1,800 small businesses that are licensed in the city. We sent them letters. We've done surveys. We've asked them what they need, how we can be helpful, things that we can do, and now we're working with them to get reopened. Another thing that we did, which is interesting in Harrisburg, is that we took our summer festival, which is Arts Fest, that just happened this past Memorial Day weekend, and we decided to take it and make it virtual. And I think we're the only city in Pennsylvania, and indeed the region, that decided to do this. A lot of times there's a whole summer festival circuit, and artisans will go from one to the other. Most cities simply canceled the festivals. In Harrisburg, we said we've got to support these small businesses, these restaurants that benefit from having all the people come downtown. How can we capture some of this economic activity in this difficult coronavirus time? And I'm pleased to say we had pretty good success. We had over 14,000 people sort of watch videos and come and look online for the festival. We had over 8,000 people enter our virtual marketplace for these businesses. So, which meant that they could go to the individual businesses, maybe see demonstrations, videos of what they do, how they make their crafts, and then hopefully order something. And a lot of the vendors have reported back to us that not only were they appreciative of that effort, but they actually were able to capitalize on it. So much so that even in the future, when we go back to having an actual outdoor festival, we'll also maintain a sort of hybrid online approach too, so that people can shop virtually. I think you're seeing a real shift in people feeling more and more comfortable with ordering online, and I think if you combine those two in the future, you can be very successful. We did another thing, which is really interesting as a part of the virtual Arts Fest. So our restaurants weren't going to obviously have the people flocking to them, but we did a neat thing where you could buy the ingredients of your favorite festival dishes, whether it was crab cakes or brick oven pizza or a jerk chicken dish, and you could support the restaurants by buying them. And then a number of the restaurants had cook-at-home how-to videos, which you could watch. So in our family, we bought these kits from one of the local restaurants through the Arts Fest page. We went home and then we watched a video and we cooked together, and we were safe, and we had a nice little dinner outside. So people were able to experience Memorial Day weekend in a virtual way, but importantly, support our businesses and safely at the same time.
And Arts Fest is one of many attractions that bring people to Harrisburg, especially in the summer. Are there any other plans to have some of those big events that people look forward to, like 4th of July, through the pandemic?
Yes. So we've discussed this with our team, and you're going to get a scoop here because we haven't announced our 4th of July plans yet. But I'll tell you, we are planning to do fireworks, and we believe that we can do fireworks safely with proper social distancing. One of the nice things about doing them over the river is you can see them from both shores, you can see them from different points in the city, and we've got miles and miles of park to spread out in and enjoy. And we're also talking about closing some streets and doing basically a drive-up food truck festival whereby you'd sort of pre-order and then drive to the food truck and pick up your foods, and then be able to either eat in your car, have a picnic with your family safely in the park, and do some things a little bit differently. Often in 4th of July, there's large crowds and people line up at the food trucks, and we're trying to avoid that, but still bring that experience for the 4th of July. So more to come. But yes, we're going to have a happy 4th of July. And then hopefully by the time we get to the fall, the city has a major festival called Capona, which is really the biggest of all. It's a celebration of life on the river. Hopefully at that time, we will be through the worst of the pandemic, and we can have larger crowds safely at that time. But we'll see.
And with the primary election approaching soon, how are polling places in Harrisburg adjusting their practices to make voting safer in the city?
Thank you. That's a good question. And the city's in an interesting, unique position because we use 2 city properties as actual polling places, and that's relatively new. We started using City Hall, for instance, as the polling place for the downtown region. And we also use one of our fire stations in one of the neighborhoods as a polling place. So we've had very specific conversations with our facilities maintenance crew on how we can keep the polling places clean. Now, City Hall is currently closed to the public, but it will be open on Election Day. We've added plexiglass. We've got additional cleaning crews. We're spacing things out. And since so many people have already requested a mail-in ballot, I have mine here, and I'm going to be speaking here in a few minutes on a Facebook Live with the head of elections to help inform people about some of the changes which they can expect on Election Day. But we think the crowds will be lighter than usual because of the heavy mail-in ballot. So a combination of lighter crowds and additional cleaning and precautions should make a difference. But we're also using a new type of technology to vote in Harrisburg. We're using these scanned ballots, which is a big change for us. And it's gonna take people, I think, a little longer to do it. But I think it will be a good experience, and we're hoping for strong turnout and a very good election day here next week.
And finally, you've been adamant about people filling out the census. Can you explain why it's important for people to do that?
Thank you. It is so important to do that because all of the city's funding is really such that comes from the federal government, is tied to our population. And we know we have large segments of poverty in the city of Harrisburg, and it's incredibly important that we get the funding that we need. Even the CARES Act funding, the coronavirus funding that came to the city, was based essentially on population. And if people aren't counted, then we're going to lose valuable resources that can help. That's just one of many reasons why people should feel comfortable replying to the census. You can do it by phone. You can do it online. There are a lot of ways to do it, and especially during this time of quarantine and social distancing, it might be harder to find people. So I'm encouraging everyone to sort of proactively fill out the census and get involved.
All right, Mayor of Harrisburg, Eric Papenfuse, thank you for your time.
And thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you.